Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. This guy here is my editor, whose name is Sun. Sun, we are here for the championship matchup of Raid Madness. It is the final round. We have two epic champions left. Who made it? Who made it here, Sun?
It was a long road, some hard-fought battles. Deacon and Geo are in the final. We've got pros, we've got cons. We're going to break it down. It's going to be an exciting matchup, I think.
I agree. I think we saw this one coming. Of course, it had to be Deacon versus Geo for you and me in the final video here. Yeah, this is an exciting matchup. We are going to take a deep dive into this. We're going to take a look at all of the opponents that these two champions beat in order to get here. And then we're going to also take a look at their kits. We're going to explore what they can do for your roster in the game on our accounts. Sun's going to be covering Geo. I'm going to be covering Deacon. Couldn't be any different, could it? Sun, what do we say to the people here?
I hope you're ready for it. Let's get started.
Okay, so the final matchup, the championship matchup, is my boy Deacon Armstrong up against your guy, Geomancer. We will get to that matchup in just a bit. But for right now, we're going to take a look back at the roads that each of these champions took to get here to the championship round. So starting in the northwest region, that is the Ice Golem's Peak. This was Deacon Armstrong's corner of the bracket. And in this quadrant, he actually came in as a 3 seed. Now, do you feel like this was a fair seeding for Deacon, or perhaps should he have been seeded a little bit higher?
I would say it's a fair seeding at the 3rd seed. I think there are arguments to be made for should he be 2nd, maybe potentially even 1st, but it's the top 4 are so close. I think you could really put him, shuffle him around anywhere you want, and you're going to get the same result. It's a really tight seed on the Ice Golem's Peak here.
Yeah, and again, just as a reminder to our viewers, these seedings came out of the in-game voting system. So we did tweak the numbers a little bit. We didn't want to value things like potion keeps too highly. So we kind of took those out of the system. But generally, these are the way that the voters seeded these champions. And again, that voting pool is the entire population of Raid players, not the viewers of our channel. So, this may reflect a more widespread view of these champions' values. Deacon clearly could have been a 2 seed here. Even in the voting system, it was very close. He and Farrakhan the Fat. But obviously, the 3 seed comes up against the 2 seed if all things go to plan, so it doesn't really matter what the seeding is. They were going to fight each other anyway. But starting in the first round, we have the 3 seed Deacon Armstrong up against the 14 seed Skull Crusher. Respectable showing from Skull Crusher, 9.7%. A little bit more of a niche champion, not perhaps as widely used as Deacon, and so almost 10% here. Not too bad for the first round. That sets up a second round matchup, Deacon Armstrong versus Skull Crown this time. Now, this I thought was going to be a little bit closer. We had one of those OG really popular champions, used to be the best Epic for Arena in the entire game, has a duo, really cool champion too, but only 7% here from Skull Crown. Were you surprised at the performance here of Deacon in the second round?
I was. I think the 93% beatdown on Skull Crown may have been a little bit too rough on her. I think Skull Crown is a fantastic champion. Like you said, a great arena champion. Everybody, especially early on in the game, has come across Skull Crown and gotten their behinds absolutely handed to them and seen the value and the power that she can bring. But definitely, I think Deacon is the better overall champion, and he deserved to go through to the next round.
Yeah, and we're starting to see here in the second round some trends emerge in the voting patterns. Right, we are seeing maybe Void champions being valued a little bit less because they have reduced accessibility. Accessibility is a factor here. In addition, damage dealers may be getting a little bit less support than high utility champions that provide more unique solutions to the content. And so based on that, not the preconceived ideas of what we expected, but based on the actual results, we're beginning to see some voting trends we can expect to play out in later rounds. So moving into the third round here in the Sacred 16, Deacon comes up against Farrakhan the Fat. This is the 3 seed versus the 2 seed. Like we said, this could have easily been reversed. and the result shows that maybe it should have been. Deacon going through against Farrakhan, who, to be fair, is a damage dealer, but a highly versatile damage dealer, right? He brings a lot to the table with that ally attack, with the HP burn and all of the additional debuffs that he brings. Do we see a trend here continuing, or is it just that this individual matchup belongs to Deacon?
I think it might have been a little bit of a tough matchup for Farrakhan here, but again, not only is it like we said for the Void Epic's accessibility for Deacon, but it's also just the range of where you can use him. He's just valuable in so many places, and Farrakhan maybe can be a little bit underrated. I think people sometimes don't think of ally attack in the like multitude of ways that you can use it and really kind of theory craft around it. Um, but Deacon just immediately brings that account value account wide, and Farrakhan might be just a little bit more niche comparatively. So 36.1%, I think is a great showing for Farrakhan, but again, I think Deacon definitely deserved a win here.
Yeah, and again, you know how much I love ally attack. I think it's a great skill. It's underrated. I do believe that
Yeah.
Deacon deserved to go through here. I think to some extent, Farrakhan showing how valuable he is early game account on an early game account, and deserved this 36%. I think. Moving into the round of the Epic 8, this is the fourth round of this bracket. This is the championship for this region. So the regional champion comes out of this matchup. Godseeker Aniri up against Deacon Armstrong. I have to say, I expected this matchup, but I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And in fact, Deacon only eked it out by a 54-46 margin. So very close here. Good showing by Godseeker Aniri, who could have very easily found herself in the final four. How do you feel about this result?
Yeah, I think this one was probably the closest to a toss-up that I've seen coming out of the Ice Golem's Peak region. It was a hard-fought battle. I think, although Godseeker Aniri is a great solution, especially to Sand Devil, we've got a video out on that, one of the most popular ones we've got. She just maybe doesn't quite have the value account-wide, and that's what pulled Deacon out and eked him out over the edge here. Um, yeah, that was a tough fight. It was a toss-up, but Deacon came out in the end.
Yeah, and again, possibly that those trends are continuing here. Accessibility matters. Deacon accessible for free day one. There are players who have played for 3 and 4 years. They constantly remind me that they haven't pulled their Godseeker Aniri, or they haven't pulled their Seer, or they haven't pulled one of their Demitha, one of those Void Epics that is so highly desirable even after 3 or 4 years of playing. And Deacon is just available to everybody day one. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was the difference here that put him over the top, which sets up an interesting conversation or, debate for the next round, which is in that final four. Deacon Armstrong against Demitha, another specialist, another Void Epic, another champion that is aspirational, that people really want to pull, but maybe get frustrated that they can't. It takes a long time for some accounts to land their Demitha. Do you think Deacon's success here at a very similar rate, 55% versus 45%, is this the same exact thing that happened in the previous round against Godseeker Aniri?
I think we're definitely seeing a bit of a trend there. Demitha is a fantastic champion, and she really unlocks that Ultra Nightmare clan boss. But again, the accessibility I think is a little bit of an issue. The amount of oomph that you need behind her in your account strength, the speeds that she requires that setup. Deacon, you plug and play. You slap him in a team, and he makes things happen. And that's no matter where you are. I think that's again really what's going to set him apart in this fight.
Yeah, and perhaps we're also seeing a little bit of a channel bias. Obviously, I'm a champion for Deacon. I do personally believe that he's the best epic in the game. I'm not shy about saying that. People have pointed that out. I think that's okay. I think that's part of the fun of these debates. Again, just like if Godseeker Aniri had gone through, if Demitha had won this matchup, I don't think there is anything to complain about. But I feel like the right outcome happened here. I believe Deacon deserved to be in the final to match up against your boy, Geomancer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the Southeast region, the Fire Knight's Castle. This was Geo's region. And we start probably with the same question we did with Deacon, which is this champion seeded too low? He is a 2 seed here. Should he have been the 1 seed instead?
Looking at the bracket, I would Not be upset if Geo was the number 1 seed. I'm not sure how Doom Priest ended up here. Again, this is going off of the in-game votes. Apparently, people love her, love a little Doom Priest. I'm not going to complain about it, but I think Geo should have been the number 1.
Yeah, Doom Priest has that value, accessibility. She doesn't even require any books to really be valuable. She's usable in a lot of content, so versatility, accessibility, and even efficiency, right? So she has a lot going for her. Again, the in-game voting system actually had Geo somewhere around a 4 or a 5 seed, and we boosted him up into the 2 seed. We could have made that choice to boost him up to the 1 seed, and realistically, I think most people would say Geo was probably the favorite for the entire bracket. He deserved to be a 1 seed. We just didn't want to tweak everything so much. We wanted to show that these, the in-game voting system is sometimes a little wonky and that people have different opinions about different champions. But if you look at the way Geo moved through this bracket, he moved through this seed like a bracket favorite. Obviously, in the first round, 96.4%. Good for Sepulchre Sentinel, even pulling down the 3.6%. Somebody showed some love there. That's fantastic. But this was never in doubt. However, we get to the second round matchup. This was at least the potential for doubt. Seer is another one of those champions that was ranked too low, not even in the top 64. We had to move her into the bracket. This was not a choice of ours to match them up in the second round. That happened based just on the random application of where the seeds landed, right? We made these brackets randomly. But so we come up here, second round, Seer versus Geomancer. Were you afraid? Did you think your boy had a chance of losing this one?
At first glance, I got a little bit worried, and then under a little bit more analysis, I thought, no shot, my boy Geo is definitely going through. I think Seer is a fantastic champion, and she may even have more power late game. But again, it requires getting to that late game. She requires setup. She requires a lot more than Geo does. He immediately brings the value. He immediately offers solutions to so many things. And taking all of that into account, I was going for Geo all the way here.
Again, this second round begins to show that voting trend. Accessibility matters. Geo is just a regular epic. Despite the fact that I don't have him on my main account after 2.5 years, he's still more accessible than Seer, who is a void epic. That may have thrown some weight in his favor. And then additionally, what you said, he's not endgame. He doesn't have to be endgame. He offers value instantaneously. He can still be used at endgame, but he is a carry, whereas Seer is more of, a champion that requires more things around her to activate. So accessibility, and power within the kit, I think, for Geo, and versatility, all of those are in his favor. Respectable showing of 30% by Seer, but this was probably his hardest matchup in the bracket, and he won it pretty handily. Which means in the next round, when we get to the Sacred 16 going up against Venomage, not a real surprise here that he pulls down almost 83% of the vote. I was hoping Venomage would show a little bit more in this round. There are similarities between these two champions. Both really versatile, both all-around account carries, both champions that if you get early in your account, you want to build. Venomage has that solo potential, but also potentially maybe she's a little bit easier to replace. He's a little bit more unique than Venomage is here. And between that and just sort of the buzz, the reputation of Geomancer, I think that probably carried him through here. What do you say?
Yeah, I think you really hit it right on the nose there. If you told me Venomage was getting 25, maybe 30% of the vote like Seer, I would not be upset by that. But yeah, I think Geo kind of just stands out above the rest here. He's got more of a unique kit. He's doing a little bit more of what Venomage is, and yeah.
Yeah, that's enough.
I think that's exactly how it ended.
Yeah. All right, so this brings our Epic 8 matchup, which is really interesting here. This is Seeker, again, another champion who didn't make the top 64. Definitely deserved to be here. Came in way too low at a 13 seed, but again, you can only tweak the numbers so much, but potentially should have been higher, maybe a 3 seed even. So Seeker comes up against Geomancer. This one was rough for me. Seeker holds a special place in my heart. He was one of my very first epics on my main account, and he is an amazing enabler. He actually enables compositions that no other champion, including legendaries, including void legendaries, enable in this game. And yet, Geomancer 88%. All right. Now I know you're happy about it because I know for sure, like you're thinking it should have been a sweep all the way. It should have been 100% Geo, 100% Geo, 100% Geo, 100% Geo. Realistically, though, do you think this shows the
Look, that's
relative
how my
power of
bracket
Seeker?
look, and I don't know about yours.
I had Geo going through. I
Yeah,
expected
yeah.
him to go through. But do you think this shows Seeker's impact? Do you think this shows his value at 12% here?
I don't think it shows his value. I think, as you said, Seeker enables teams to do things that they otherwise never could. Uh, but that also potentially makes him the unsung hero in a lot of cases. And I think because of that, we're just not seeing represented in his percentage here how valuable he really is.
Yeah, I think what you make a good point. The unsung hero, and this sets up sort of an interesting conversation for the final matchup, right? Because Seeker is an enabler. Deacon is also an enabler. They make the champions around them better. But sometimes that goes under the radar. It flies under the radar. You don't realize how powerful these champions are, how much they contribute until you remove them from a composition and you start to struggle. On the other hand, Geomancer's power is very conspicuous. You see what he does instantaneously. The power in his kit comes shining through. He's not enabling other champions, he's enabling himself, right? He's doing things that maybe Seeker, maybe Deacon, those things don't come through as clearly. So we'll see what happens in terms of the conversation of the finals. But for right now, we still have the final four matchup. This is Maneater coming out of the Northeast region. That's the Dragon's Lair. We've got Geomancer coming out of the Southeast region. They're matching up here in the final four. And Geomancer handles this as well. Not very difficult, nearly 80% for Geomancer against 20% for Maneater. Now, interestingly enough, in the final four, we have four great clan boss champions, but specifically, Demitha is one of the unkillable epic champions available. Maneater, one of the unkillable epic champions available. They're both void epics. They both get to the final four, and they both lose in the final four. Demitha didn't do as poorly as Maneater. Maneater got a little bit more of a beatdown. Does this show the relative power of these champions, or is it more about their opponents that they came up against?
I think it might be starting to fall a bit more down to the opponents. I think there's good reason Demitha and Maneater made it through. They're both great clan boss champions, and you want to get that clan boss locked down. But I think it also starts to show is after that clan boss is locked down, maybe people just don't find as much value for these champions elsewhere. And I think it's starting to get more of that game-wide view where you're finding other solutions in other places with trying to get as few champions as possible. That maybe that's where we're starting to see a couple ticks away from Maneater and Demitha here.
Yeah, again, those voting trends carrying all the way through here into the finals. If you talk about accessibility, Deacon and Geo are more accessible as non-void epics, right? The void epics are a little bit harder to get. In addition, we're seeing that versatility, preferred over the specialists. Demitha and Maneaters are considered more specialists. Deacon usable everywhere, Geo usable nearly everywhere. Like, these are very versatile champions. In addition, maybe we're seeing a channel bias, right? Obviously, the two epics that we talk about on our channel the most are Deacon and Geo. I'm a Deacon fanatic, you're a Geo fanatic. These are the champions that we love to use. And so there's a lot going on here. I do think they deserve to be in the final up against each other. And now we come to the fun part of the video. We actually are going to take a deep dive into each of these champions' kits, and we're going to show how they're used on our accounts. You're going to show off your Geo. I'm going to show off the Deacon on my HH Challenge account, so you can actually see where this value comes from in order to make your vote on this championship round. You ready for it, son?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so here we are on Sun's main account. This is his new Versus Pro account that we started together. We're about, 260-ish days in at this point?
Yeah, somewhere right around there.
Okay, so 260 days in. When did you pull Geo? When did he hit your roster?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact date. It was probably like 2, maybe 3 months in. And I mean, the second I got him, he started making changes in my account.
So you've potentially had this Geo for 180, 200 days, something around there. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at, first of all, how have you built him? And like, was this your first build? Is it your 10th build? Like, how did you start building him? And, you know, show us your stats, I guess.
Yeah, so Geo, he's definitely gone through a couple of iterations here, but pretty much the second I got him, he started getting into my clan boss team, and it's kind of revolving around him and Brogni. So his build reflects that. He is here to tank damage and hit hit his weaken and his A3 HP burn to get those deflects off, and that's exactly what's happening here. So, yeah, he's at 3,500, right around their defense. He's got just enough accuracy to clear the bar, and then from there, just pure tank.
So you built him really tanky. Now, right when you got him, you said he started making progress on your account. Where did you use him first? Did you use him in a lot of places right away? But where were the places that you saw him giving you value? In fact, if you could take us to a place where he's giving you value right now, that'd be great too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the second I pulled him, I started trying him everywhere. Of course, he immediately made it into pretty much all of my dungeon teams. He's like, for example, lead here in Ice Golem. He's bringing that extra HP. He does damage, but he doesn't do it in big swings, and that's great for fights like this here. We're bringing him into the spiders. Then he's doing that turn meter control work, bringing the HP burn. We've got him going into the Dragon Slayer. Again, he's just bringing so much value ever into Fire Knights. Again, he's doing that turn meter control. So yeah, immediately he made it into all of my teams. But I think maybe what might have been the most surprising at the time was actually how much value I found for him in Arena. Um, Sometimes, especially when we're hanging out in the community, people are kind of surprised looking at my live Arena score. A lot of this was early with Geomancer because he goes in, he does that turn meter steal on the enemy arena, the carries, and he can get past champions like UDK. And if they try to do anything to me, they're just destroying their own DPS. And that I think was maybe one of the most surprising uh, kind of showings for Geo early for me.
That's really interesting because in live arena, what I have found is the number one ban my team gets is Deacon. Deacon gets removed off the board every time. And so the value in putting Deacon into the roster is that I know that he's getting banned and I almost always get all of my other champions, but I almost never get Deacon to use on my team. Whereas Geo feels like somebody who would never get banned.
Never gets banned. Nobody ever even blinks an eye at Geo until he turns around. HP burns their their DPS. They kill themselves on it, and then he goes and he steals anybody's buffs that are still alive and allows me to finish them off too. Yeah, he's surprisingly versatile for Arena, and people just don't really see him that way.
That's fantastic. But you also made him the cornerstone of your clan boss team, am I right? You said he and Brogni are a powerhouse duo.
Yeah, it is. He and Brogni are the cornerstone of my clan boss team. So I've got it now to where it's a consistent two key. Geo, Brogni, they're kind of the bulk of the damage, and then we've got Miscreated, Taragi, and then Fane, who's actually built. He's so squishy, built pure defense, bringing him some additional debuffs. Uh, but yeah, Geomancer, he's the rock there.
So this is a really interesting team. Obviously, it is a killable clan boss team. You've got two ally protectors. You've got shields from Brogni. You've got HP burns, poisons, weaken, decrease attack, decrease defense. You've literally got everything going on there. And what is the result? What are you, consistently doing here? Maybe I'll get out of the way. That's a 38 million damage on a one key. Is that what that looks like?
Yeah, it varies a little bit just depending on which affinity we're going against. I mean, I think top end, highest I've seen is coming out around 48 million so far with how they're built. But yeah, they're pretty much always averaging at least the two key across the board, regardless of affinity. So that's good enough for right now as a killable team for what I need him to do.
Yeah, it's really important to get your account to the two key Ultra Nightmare threshold. That obviously the first threshold is the four key Ultra Nightmare, right? Like that's really important to be able to get that top key in Ultra Nightmare. But when you get to the two key, that allows you potentially to one key Nightmare and one key Brutal. and get 6 top chests, depending on how your clan is doing. And that's where you are right now, I'm assuming. You can 1-key Nightmare and 1-key Brutal?
Yep, exactly.
And so, moving past this point to a 1-key Ultra Nightmare is much less of a priority. It's always nice to be able to do that. And this composition won't do that. You will have to change this composition, maybe get that Demytha composition going. And Geo pairs really well with Demytha in like a Myth Air composition because he actually becomes the stun target, prevents Eris from being targeted, right? And he's a great damage dealer in that unkillable team. So potentially that could be somewhere you go in the future. But for right now, you've been in a very good place. How quickly did you get to your 2-key Ultra Nightmare status?
Yeah, I think once I got Geo, I immediately started focusing on the clan boss, and it took a couple of iterations. Like when I first got to Ultra Nightmare, maybe it was a month or two before I got to a consistent like 3-key, and then into now 2-key. Probably has been the last 3 months or so. So yeah, as soon as I got the Geo, that started moving in that direction in maybe like a month or two.
So somewhere in the 150 to 180 day range, that's when you hit the 2-key. That's nice. That's a good place to be. And like I said, it's harder to do with an unkillable, right? It's easier to do the 2-key with an unkillable comp. Even if it's a little bit trickier in terms of like if it's Demytha or Man-Eater, but if you get a double Man-Eater is almost an instant 2-key with anything. So that can be a little bit easier. But I think in this particular case, like I know how hard you've worked on that speed tune and getting it to a place where it's consistently getting you 2-key against every affinity, full auto. That's fantastic. So you don't have quick battle unlocked for Ultra Nightmare, right? That's probably the one downside. But you just click go, you walk away, you make a sandwich, you come back, it's done, and you've got your 2-key. So that's pretty fantastic. All right, outside of Clan Boss and the use that you said, the surprising use in Arena, obviously he factors in all of your dungeon teams. Is there another place where you found that, man, he has just provided a ton of value, maybe a solution in Doom Tower, maybe a solution in one of the other dungeons that you simply couldn't get from another champion? So that's definitely no surprise. Has there been anywhere on the account where you found like maybe you used him for a while and now that you have better options, you've moved him out? Maybe he's not providing as much value in some places as he used to?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was, alluding with the advent of the Armands,
Sure.
the new era. Yeah, I think he is replacing Geo in some areas. So more specifically for wave content, where I used to try to use Geo for more targeted solutions. Now with Armands, you could just hit the entire wave, do the same thing, steal that turn meter, lock them out, do the stun. I mean, it's kind of wild what that champion does. Um, for that particular part of it, he's just a better solution. But that doesn't really change Geo's value for me anywhere else. He's still the best solution for me in places like Spider, in places like Fire Knight. He just has the control that I don't have anywhere else. So yeah, he's lost a little bit of stock in like wave content, I would say. But elsewhere, he's still top dog all the way.
All right, fantastic. Well, I think nobody's surprised, right? Obviously, you pull a Geo, you build him, you focus on him, you find solutions with him, and he performs. That's the thing about a champion like this. When we get into debates, not you and I, but when I get into debates with viewers about his value, I think one of the things people say is, one, he's unique, and two, he's usable in so much content, and three, he provides solutions that other champions can't. And I think we were talking about in the bracket conspicuous effect, right? You plug this guy in and you see what he personally does, and that changes the outcome of your fights. And so it's a 1-to-1 correlation. You just like, I plug in Geo, I succeed, right? Like that's how it feels, and you see why. And that's a very different thing than what we're going to be talking about with Deacon. Deacon's influence sometimes flies under the radar. We talked about that. So now we're going to switch over to my account. This will be my HH Challenge account, and we're going to show off Deacon a little bit. You ready?
Let's do it.
Are you scared?
Nah, not even close.
Yeah, you're going to see some things. All right, let's go.
All right, cool. So here we are on your account. Now, I know we're looking at your HH free-to-play challenge account, and I know Deacon didn't immediately factor in for you here. When did you pull him?
Well, I'm on day 87 right now, and I would say I probably pulled him somewhere around day 50, or maybe 40, somewhere 40 to 50, I think, because it was the first 2 times Ancient Shard event that I really pulled shards for, which was the second one. So it was more than 6 weeks into the account. So maybe 7 or 8 weeks into the account when I pulled.
Yeah, and man, that's such a fantastic pull too, because everybody gets him as the promo code if they can, but I think you start to see the value that you're losing when you're not able to start with them. Now, I know you've kind of told us a little bit about that, but why did you pick your starter champion not as Deacon, and where did you start to see the change the second you did pull him?
Yeah, so I actually started with Mordecai as my new player promo code. And the reason I did is because he is an AoE HP burner, and we were all getting Rathalos. Rathalos was the only legendary we were guaranteed to get, and we were allowed to use in the challenge. And so I decided to pull Mordecai because the AoE HP burn is just really rare, and it activates Rathalos. And I have to say, it hurt. It hurt to not have Deacon on the account for those first 6 or 7 weeks, whatever it happened to be. Progress was slower in a lot of places. Progress was most restricted actually in Arena, I think. Day 1, you can plug, Deacon into Arena and start making progress right there. So as soon as I did get him on my account, the first thing I did was build him as fast as possible. I was originally building an apothecary to be my speed booster and my turn meter filler. I stopped that immediately. I pulled the best gear off of apothecary, put it onto my Deacon Armstrong, and that just turbo boosted. It got me to gold 5 in like less than a week, probably like 6 days. And so that I went from gold 2 to gold 5 in like a week once I pulled Deacon. So that was the most obvious improvement right away. And if you can see from my build, the build is pretty good for, less than 90 days. I've got him at 43,000 HP, 3.5k defense, 275 speed. I wouldn't mind this being a little bit higher, but this is around the sweet spot. I usually shoot for 280 for my fastest champion as early as I can. 337 is around the sweet spot for accuracy as well. I usually shoot to try to get over 300. You don't need much more than 300 at this point of the game. You can basically land everything that you need to land as a debuffer here. So I was able to get him into good gear. Obviously, this is built over time. This is almost 90 days now. But yeah, so that first place that I saw him make a huge improvement was Arena.
Yeah, he's one of the best epics in the game out the gates for Arena. I think he's just bringing a lot of value there. The turn meter, the defense, decreased defense. But I also know that pulling him allowed you to progress in a lot of other areas. And I think there's one maybe we want to show off specifically here.
There are a lot of areas that we could show off here, but remember, this is what did we say, 87-day account.
Yeah.
And when I got Deacon, like I wasn't sure who my next 6-star was going to be, and then I pulled Deacon, and I was like, oh, he's the 6-star, and I'm building him as well as I can, and we're going to put him in every team. And that's what I did. I put him in every single team. Obviously, he became my speed or lead. He's got the turn meter fill, the turn meter decrease, the AoE drop defense. He's got the double hitter on his A1, which helped in Fire Knight. He's got the leech on his A1, which helps against a lot of these bosses. But I've seen a lot of progress here in various areas. And so here I am at stage 7 hard mode dragon, which is my most advanced dungeon. But I am in all of the hard mode dungeons, I think, except Fire Knight. Actually, no, Ice Golem I'm not. But Spider and Dragon I am. I've pushed Ice Golem really, Iron Twins really far. But yeah, this is a really interesting kind of case study for Deacon and how we were talking before about like conspicuous power versus sort of power that flies under the radar. Now, first of all, when you plug him in, you get you see the effect. Like the team gets better. You don't necessarily see what he's doing to make it better all the time. It's not like really obvious that he's making the team better. Obviously, the AoE drop defense here is helpful in terms of clearing the waves. It's also helpful in terms of killing the boss. And I know that people will look at the Nergigante Archer, and this is going to be the debate about this account. How important has she been to progress? She's been incredibly important to progress. Of course, she has. She's one of 2 legendaries I have. I've built a lot of my roster around her. But Rathalos is the power on this account. He is the one that makes this account move. He's got the 4-star blessing. I've got the Mordecai, also 6-starred with him. It's a lot of investment in Rathalos. And Deacon empowers Rathalos a lot. So obviously the AoE dropped defense, but here's the thing that actually happened. On this round, on this stage 7, everybody dies. Archer dies, Melga dies, Deacon dies, everybody dies. And then Rathalos solos the boss from like 50 or 60% all the way down. He has strong affinity into the boss, so he doesn't get, critically hit very often. He's in lifesteal gear. But when everybody's dead, everybody loses their influence on the team, except for Deacon. Because Deacon is the speed aura lead. And so that means even when he's dead, Rathalos is getting that 19% extra speed, which allows him to get more attacks in, which allows his lifesteal to regenerate his health, which allows him to solo this boss. If I did this switch, if I put Melga in here with the 15% extra HP in the start, I would lose this fight. I would not be able to keep everybody alive, and Rathalos would not be able to solo the boss. And I've done that. I've made that switch because I was trying to keep everybody alive, and everybody gets wiped out. And so just making this small switch, you're like, well, is it really that big a difference? Sometimes it is. And in this case, I have the most advanced, dungeon here out of all of the content creators. I think there are 1 or 2 other guys who are at the same point. And I would say Rathalos is key, but without Deacon, Rathalos doesn't get it done.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point that you made, especially about the speed lead there, that's still going to be effective even if Deacon somehow falls in the midst of battle there. But also another kind of interesting point that I've heard you make before is that, especially in this case, with the legendaries and the book value, not having those books and losing out on those cooldowns, Deacon is kind of maybe supplementing that a little bit, or making up for that a little bit by bringing in that turn meter and that speed to get them and cycle them around faster again.
Yeah, and this is the value you can get out of like a High Katoon or an Apothecary, anybody who pushes your turn meter and gives you more turns compared to the enemy, right? You're reducing the number of turns the enemy gets, and you're increasing your number of turns. That helps supplement champions who don't have all of their books and all of their cooldowns matched. So if you look at the champions, I've gotten to the point where I'm almost fully booked now on these champions. But like if we look at Archer, people will say, Archer is a powerhouse on this account. Obviously she is. But if you look right here, I don't have this book on this A3. Now this A3 is the Hex and Provoke. It's an incredibly powerful skill. It's especially usable in Hydra. I have been able to pull down 45 million damage in Hydra normal, right? Normal Hydra in less than 90 days. Archer is one of the reasons. But without this book, the only way this works is to have somebody who's pushing her constantly to get extra turn meter and extra speed. And the only one on my account who does that is Deacon. So without Deacon, I've done the same thing. I'll show you my Hydra team really quickly. Now, if you look at it, all of the champions are good for Hydra. Every single one of them, I've been able to put together an amazing Hydra team here. I've got Ugo. I've got Inquisitor Shemael. Obviously, this has been a focus of my account. I've got Archer. So I've got all the things I need. But when you think about the cooldowns here and the speeds that you need, right? These champions are not necessarily fast enough to keep all of the buffs up, especially without Nergigante's book in her provoke, right? You need that provoke, that AoE provoke. You need that AoE hex. Deacon is the one that makes this work. So I've actually gotten away from this, and I've, again, tried the Melga. More sustainability. She's got the shield. She's got the heals. She's also got the miracle heal or whatever it is that like restores max HP. I figured this would give me more turns. And when I did this, I lost almost 15 million in terms of a key. Oof. So I lost 30% damage by switching out Deacon. Deacon's not a damage champion. And yet his presence on this team gave me 30% more damage. Again, it's not conspicuous. You don't always see it. You don't think he's the one doing the damage, but he's empowering everybody else on the team. Ugo gets her faster cooldowns. Rathalos does more damage. He gets around to his damage faster. Archer gets that 100% lockdown with the provoke, allows you to get more control of the fight. You never have to worry about the team composition breaking down the way you do when Melga's in the lead. So the extra survivability doesn't do me as much benefit as getting those turns just moving.
Yeah, I think that's going to speak volume for Deacon in this matchup. But can he stand against Geo? That's the question, Cole. What do you think?
That is the question, and it's a really interesting question. We're talking about very conspicuous power versus utility where you're empowering the rest of your roster. For my money, and this would be my argument for Deacon, is that regardless of what roster you have, regardless of who your other champions are, Deacon makes everybody better. He's not the most powerful champion, but he makes your most powerful champions even more effective. And so as a efficiency test, right? Like in terms of just getting the most bang for your buck, I think if you've heavily invested in the Rathalos like I have, and your Rathalos can be even better because Deacon's in the team, that's valuable, especially for a free-to-play player. I've done everything that I've done on this account with basically I did it with 6 champions. I've now got, 8 6-stars. But without Deacon, that absolutely doesn't happen. And I will say this as well. If I put Geo in this roster, I don't think I get the same results. Even with Archer, even with Rathalos, I don't think Geo empowers those champions, and therefore they don't do the solutions that they can do as well. All right, so that is my guide. That is my argument why Deacon is the best epic in Raid Shadow Legends. But now we got to talk about your guy again. Give me your argument. What is it about Geo that makes him, in your opinion, the best epic in Raid Shadow Legends?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Geo's reputation kind of precedes him. I think he is one of the best, if not the best, epic in Raid Shadow Legends, because he's just a solution that works for so many places. I mean, doesn't really matter in some cases what the compositions of your team are. He's kind of just a pillar that he does what he does, and he doesn't require anything else to get it done. So I mean, you're talking about like your Iron Twin solutions, or for me in my case, in Clan Boss. My team kind of builds him up a little bit by adding that defense, but his job doing what he doesn't require anybody else to do it. And I think that with his unique play style kind of sets him apart there. So he doesn't matter where you're at in the game. It doesn't matter if you're early in and you don't have great gear. You put your Geo in, and he's gonna get work done for you. And I think that just combining his unique kit, his unique abilities, the unique way that he goes into fights and is able to kind of answer and solve those problems, really sets him apart.
I agree. I mean, he's obviously a fantastic champion. And, you said he's one of, if not the best epic in the game. And we're down to the final 2. So he is one of the best epics in the game. No doubt the people have spoken. We know that this is true, right? The question is, will they agree with you that he is actually number 1, or does Deacon squeak this out? Now, I will say, your boy's the favorite. Everybody's got to be thinking Geo was going to walk away with this. I hope I've made a good enough case to make it close. We'll see if Deacon can surprise us. I have to say, I'm not worried. I'm not worried. I think whatever happens, we have a great champion. We have an absolutely great champion.
For sure.
And, hopefully the debate has been fun. That's the cool thing about this. Looking at these champions with a new perspective, with a fresh, eye, and saying, oh, I didn't think about this. Oh, I've learned something new. Oh, this debate, helped really energize my interest in a particular champion. And I'll say this, if you have either of these champions and you haven't built them or experimented with them to the utmost of your ability, there's more progress to be made out of both of these champions. Either one is going to enable you to do things that you're not currently doing, if you haven't really believed in them, if you haven't maximized them, right? I know that on your account, there is more progress that Geo will still unlock for you in the future. And I know that on my account, on my HH account, whoever inherits that account, like if they continue to invest in Deacon, he's going to continue to perform absolutely outstandingly for them. So it's definitely a worthwhile final. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. Do you have a prediction? What do you think percentage-wise is going to happen?
Man, I'm predicting it's gonna be hopefully fairly close. I think we might be looking at like a 55-45, 40-60, maybe pushing it a little bit. I have a feeling Gio's gonna pull it out in the end, but I really think it's a really close fight. And you've made a great case for Deacon. I think there's absolutely tons of different ways to look at it where you could say Deacon could take the whole thing. It's not a guarantee. And I think that's what makes it such an interesting matchup.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Two very different champions, but both very, very good, very versatile, very usable, highly valuable. The superlatives could go on and on. These two champions deserve to be here. My prediction, I'm calling Deacon 53-47. That's my prediction. I think it's going to be really close. I think Deacon's going to pull the upset. But now you get to decide what actually happens. So the votes are currently live. This is the championship round. We need your votes. So head over to the link in the description below. Make your choice. Make your choice for
Make the right choice.
For Sun's boy Geo, or make the choice for the best epic in Raid Shadow Legends, Deacon Armstrong. But whatever you choose, there's no wrong choice. I won't be mad. Will you be mad? We won't be mad, right?
No, as long as Geo wins.
All right, there you have it. That is it for this episode of Raid Madness. We will come back with an awards ceremony because we have to crown the champion, and then we also have to discover which ones of our viewers have won the bracket challenge. We haven't actually looked at in over a month since the very beginning, so there will be at least one more episode of Raid Madness. So look forward to that as well. Son, thanks so much for this. This has been really fun. I've enjoyed doing this with you. Do you have anything to say to the people before we go?
I think it's been a lot of fun. Thank you everybody for joining us for Raid Madness. Like we said, we've got another episode coming, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, hope you all have a fantastic, another beautiful day.
Have a beautiful day and go vote. Do it now. All right, thanks so much. I've been Cole Red. He has been Sun, and we will see you in another video soon.